Hello everyone, welcome to the PMP exam question and answers solving session for February. Now, as you are aware, the syllabus and the format of the PMP exam is changing from July 2026. So if you are a PMP exam aspirant, you should make every effort to clear the exam before the format changes takes into effect, and that means to give your best to prepare and pass the exam within June 2026, and this video will help you to do that. So just like the previous months, we would be solving 5 medium to high difficulty level PMP exam style questions as per the current exam format, which is valid till June 2026 in this video. And for each of the 5 questions, we would be doing a detailed explanation on the correct and the incorrect answer choices. The intent of this exercise is firstly to test how well you are prepared for the PMP exam. So for example, you can use this scorecard that you see on screen to test and assess your performance across the 5 questions. And secondly, the goal of this exercise is to develop your understanding on the correct process and strategy to solve PMP exam questions efficiently on your actual exam day. So please give this video a like and let's get started with question number 1.
Right, so question number 1, guys, please pause the video and try to answer the question first before we solve this together. Right, so let's start. So you are managing a construction project for a corporate campus using a hybrid approach, okay? Now, fixed milestones guide the overall delivery, but the adaptive development cycles allow for flexibility within those boundaries as well, right? So that's how the hybrid project typically work. So during execution, a senior stakeholder raises concerns that completed building sections don't support the organization's changing operational requirements. Now, what should the project manager do first? So let's look at the options one by one. Now, option A is incorrect, okay, because it suggests jumping straight to a formal change request. Now, change control is important, okay, in hybrid projects as well, okay. However, this approach is a bit premature, isn't it? We haven't even confirmed whether there is a genuine misalignment or is it simply a communication gap, right? So I'll tell you one thing, in real world scenarios as well, I have seen project managers waste weeks, okay, processing change requests only to discover the issue was a misunderstanding about delivered value. Okay, now that's not a productive use for anyone's time. So the hybrid approach requires us to be more adaptive than this rigid response suggests as part of option A. Okay, so it's incorrect. Now option C is also incorrect, okay, because it tells us to ask the product owner to revise the backlog. Now this option assumes we already know what needs to change and we bypass a critical step, which is understanding the stakeholders' actual concerns. So think about a situation where a stakeholder might say that this doesn't meet our needs, right? But they haven't really articulated what the gap actually is, okay? So jumping to backlog revision without proper dialogue with the stakeholder could lead you as a project manager to fix the wrong problem, which you don't want. So option C is also incorrect. Let's look at option D, which is also incorrect, okay? Because it recommends pausing development entirely. So this is basically an overreaction, right? That contradicts the hybrid methodology principles. Pausing work creates immediate schedule and cost impacts, right? And it, of course, demoralizes the team and assumes that business requirements can fully be stabilized even you sort of decide to pause a project randomly, okay? Which really, if you think about, rarely happens in today's dynamic business environment, and especially when in a hybrid project, you are managing both fixed scope and an agile scope as well. So you are balancing between agility and also certainty. So option D is also incorrect. So the correct answer to this question is option B, because it addresses the situation collaboratively and systematically. Okay, so when a stakeholder raises concerns about value alignment, your first response as a product manager should be to facilitate open dialogue, right? So this discussion clarifies the stakeholders' actual concerns, it engages the team if you think about it, and it also validates whether delivered features truly miss the mark or if there is a perception gap, right? Very important. So in hybrid projects, this collaborative reassessment is essential before taking any corrective action. Okay, so the correct answer to this question is option B.
Now, if you are preparing for the PMP exam in 2026, I would suggest that you check out my PMP exam preparation courses on Udemy. All the courses are very highly rated amongst the students, and many PMP exam aspirants have passed the PMP exam with the help of these courses. And just to assure you, all the courses are fully updated and compliant as per the current version of the PMP exam, which will stay in effect till June 2026. You will find all the relevant links in the description section of this video. And now let's move on to question number 2.
Right, so question number 2, guys, the drill will remain the same. Please read the question and try to answer it before we solve this together. You can pause the video here if you wish to. Right, so you are managing a hybrid project to implement a healthcare patient management system. Okay, fair enough. So during execution, a key stakeholder alerts you that recent deliverables no longer align with evolving regulatory requirements, right? And that is what exactly the scenario is mentioning. The sponsor acknowledges that modifications are necessary, okay, but expresses concerns about potential timeline impacts. So what should the project manager do next? So option A is incorrect, okay, because it jumps to submitting a formal change request and adjusting the schedule, okay. While change control is essential in hybrid projects, this approach is a bit premature, okay. So you are treating the situation with a purely predictive mindset, triggering formal change control before even exploring whether the adaptive components of your hybrid approach can address this misalignment, okay. So that is why option A is definitely incorrect. So in practice, many alignment issues in hybrid projects can be resolved through backlog reprioritization without requesting formal baseline changes. Now let's look at option C, which is also incorrect, okay, because it escalates the concern to the change control board immediately. So this option delays action and adds unnecessary bureaucracy, right, which you really want to avoid as part of a hybrid project team. The change control board typically reviews changes that impact baselines, okay, which are cost, scope, schedule, etc. However, in a hybrid model, mind it, you have an adaptive cycle or adaptive element around it precisely to handle evolving needs without constant escalation. So imagine escalating every alignment concern into a hybrid project management scenario, right? So you would create bottlenecks and you would defeat the purpose of having adaptive elements built into your overall hybrid model, which truly puts the entire hybrid scheme of a program management or a project flow management into question, right? So that is why option C is incorrect. Let's look at option D, which is also incorrect because it recommends pausing all the work and conducting a benefits reassessment. So this is really an extreme overreaction, right? That contradicts hybrid methodology principles. Now, pausing work creates immediate productivity loss, team disruption, schedule impact, you name it, right? Exactly what the sponsor is concerned about, right? So a benefits reassessment is a strategic exercise typically reserved for major project pivots, okay? Not for addressing evolving regulatory requirements that can be accommodated through adaptive planning. So the correct answer to this question is option B because it leverages the adaptive strength of your hybrid approach. Very important. So reviewing the product backlog and collaborating with stakeholders to reprioritize allows you as a project manager to address evolving regulatory requirements while minimizing schedule disruption. Now, if you think about it, this approach acknowledges that in hybrid projects, you can often accommodate changes within adaptive cycles without triggering a formal change control. So by reprioritizing, you are maintaining a forward momentum, keeping the team productive, all good things, right? And addressing the stakeholder concerns efficiently. So the correct answer to this question is option B.
Now, before we move on to question number 3, I would like to introduce you to my PMP exam study group on YouTube. It's a monthly subscription-based study group where I share daily tips on highly nuanced topics and strategies to help you pass the PMP exam. The fees are very nominal. You can try it for a month or so and you will be able to see a dramatic improvement in the way you approach to solve PMP exam questions. Feedback from students for this study group has been excellent. You will find the link to join the study group in the description section of this video in case you are interested. So now let's move on to question number 3.
Right, so question number 3, the drill will remain the same. Please read the question and try to solve it first before we solve this together. You can pause the video here if you wish to. Right, so let's get started. So here is the situation. So we are working on an agile patient portal project that's part of a larger healthcare digital transformation program, right? A new data privacy regulation just dropped, okay? And nobody is entirely sure what it means for our patient consent workflows yet. So the executives want an immediate decision or an action, but the regulatory details won't be clear for weeks to come. Okay. So the question is asking what the agile project manager should do first. Okay. So let's look at the answers one by one. So option A is incorrect. Okay. Because it suggests stopping all the sprint activities until everything is crystal clear. Now think about it. Does that sound really like agile to you? Absolutely not, right? Look, agile is all about adapting to change, right? Not freezing in place when uncertainty shows up. So if we halt agile development completely, we are essentially throwing away the team's velocity, momentum, and potentially weeks of value delivery, right? That's waterfall thinking, okay? Which is to wait until you have perfect information, okay? So in real world, if an agile team stopped every time requirements become fuzzy, they'd never be able to complete any product development cycle, okay? And that's why this does not make sense at all, and option A is definitely an incorrect answer choice. Let's look at option B, which is also incorrect, okay? Because it talks about initiating integrated change control. Right, you see, that's a formal change management process, right? From predictive project management. Now, in agile projects, we do not use the full-fledged integrated change control boards and formal impact assessments on scope, cost, quality, schedule, etc. Okay, so we adapt change through backlog refinement and prioritization in agile projects. Okay, so if you really think about it, this answer is asking us to apply a predictive methodology tool to an agile project, okay, which doesn't really fit. So option B is also incorrect. Let's look at option D, which is also incorrect, okay, because it suggests updating the risk register with a high risk rating. Now, fair enough, documenting risks are important, okay, but does just writing something down actually help us understand the regulations impact? Really not, right? So this is passive record keeping, not proactive problem solving that we keep on discussing across our Q&A videos for the last few months, okay? Or maybe whenever you go back, please study the Q&A videos on this channel. I think I have done at least like 20-25 Q&A videos already on this channel, so that's a massive repository free for you to prepare for your PMP exam, right? Now, coming back to this question, in agile environments, we do not typically maintain traditional risk registers anyway, okay? Because we manage risks through transparency, inspection, and adaptation. So that is why option D is also incorrect. So the correct answer to this question is option C, which is really spot on, okay? So we collaborate with stakeholders, including the product owner, to add exploratory work to the backlog. Well, you see that this is classic agile thinking, okay? We are uncertain about the regulation's impact, so we create investigation stories or spikes to explore it. So this keeps the team moving, maintains our iterative rhythm as an agile team, and actually generates insights which the team needs. So the correct answer to this question is option C.
Right, let's now move on to question number 4.
Right, so question number 4, the drill will remain the same. Please pause the video and try to answer the question first before we solve this together. Right, so let's get started. So let's break down what's happening here, right? So we are in the execution phase of a predictive manufacturing project, and a prototype component just passed the quality inspection. It meets every technical specification we have documented, but here is the problem. The end users are saying that it doesn't meet their usability expectations, and nobody even wrote down those expectations, okay? Now the users want changes. However, the sponsor is nervous about the budget and the project manager needs to figure out the next move. So what should you do as a project manager in this situation? Let's look at the answers one by one. Now option B is incorrect, okay, because it suggests asking the users to document their expectation and updates the requirements baseline, which definitely the users will not be doing for you, right? So you see, this sounds proactive on the surface of it, but if you think about it, we are in the execution phase, not in the planning phase firstly, okay? The requirements baseline was already approved and locked down. Now you can't just casually update it and let your users update it, okay? And even further, you can't expect the users will be updating it for you because someone remembered something they forgot to mention earlier, okay? So that's not how baseline works in predictive projects. So if you really think about it, changing a baseline requires formal change control in a predictive project, okay? Not just updating documentation, whether it's done by you or by your users, okay? So this puts option B in a very tricky situation, and that is why option B is incorrect. Now, if you evaluate option C, that is also incorrect, okay? Because it says that you accept the deliverable since it meets the requirements and you escalate this to the sponsor. Right, it's a very tricky proposition, honestly, guys, okay? Now, if you think about it, yes, technically the component passes inspection, but does ignoring the stakeholder satisfaction sound like good project management to you? Really not, right? Look, our job isn't just to check boxes on specifications, right? As project manager, it is to deliver value, okay? Please keep that in mind. So if we accept something that doesn't satisfy key stakeholders, we are setting ourselves for a project failure, even if we are technically correct, okay? And this doesn't really fit, okay? Plus, we'd be, of course, dumping the problem now on the sponsor without doing our job as a project manager first. So option C is also an incorrect answer choice. Let's look at option D, which is also incorrect because it recommends conducting a root cause analysis. Now, fair enough, understanding what went wrong is valuable, but think about it, is this really the next action? Because mind it, the question stem has asked for the next action, right? When stakeholders are demanding immediate correction. So do you really think this makes sense? Okay, conducting a root cause analysis now, because think about it, root cause analysis is important for lessons learned and preventing future issues, okay? But right now we have an active problem that needs an immediate resolution. So this tactic of root cause analysis and doing all this data crunching and sort of intellectualization at this point in time might not be the best step to take forward as a project manager. So option D is also incorrect. So the correct answer to this question is option A. Okay, we need to submit a change request to formally evaluate the impact of addressing this undocumented expectation. Okay, and this is exactly what the textbook integrated change control form provides you for a predictive project management technique. So when something needs to change, whether it's scope, schedule, or cost, we don't just make decisions in a vacuum, right? We follow the formal change management process. The change request triggers an impact analysis, which will give you answers to questions like what will be the cost, how much time will it add, what resources do we need, does it affect the other deliverables, etc., etc. Okay, and that protects both the project and the sponsor by providing data for an informed decision making. So the correct answer to this question is option A.
Next, moving on to question number 5. Remember, the target is to get all the 5 out of the 5 questions correct, okay? However, the minimum expectation is that you will get at least 4 out of the 5 questions correct to consider yourself fairly well prepared for the PMP exam. You can assess your level of preparation according to this scorecard. So here comes question number 5.
Right, so question number 5, guys, please read the question and try to solve this first before we take this up together. You can pause the video here if you wish to. Right, so let's get started. Here is what we are dealing with in this scenario, right? So we are late in stages of a bridge construction project, and the sponsor just approved a design change for safety improvements. Now that sounds great, right? But here is the catch. This change creates serious timeline risks. The structural engineering team is maxed out. Department heads won't give us more people, and the sponsor still wants the original deadline. So the project manager is stuck between competing constraints, and we as a team need to figure out the next move. Okay, so let's look at the options one by one. Now option A is incorrect, okay, because it suggests compressing the schedule using crashing and fast tracking techniques. Now think about it, crashing means adding resources, okay? But we just established that functional managers refused to provide us with additional stuff. So how exactly we are going to crash, okay? Well, you see, fast tracking also means that doing activities in parallel that should be sequential, which increases the risk. But we are already facing significant schedule risk from this change, okay? Now piling more risk on top doesn't solve anything, okay? It just creates a disaster waiting to happen, okay? And that is why option A is not the correct answer choice. Let's look at option B, which is also incorrect because it says update the risk register and proceed as approved. Right, now that is a very tricky proposition, honestly, okay? Yes, the sponsor might approve the change, but does it really mean that we blindly execute when even we know that success might not be possible for you as a project manager or for the entire team? Because think about it, just documenting risks in a risk register doesn't make the impossible possible, right? So if you really think about it, this is passive compliance, okay, not project management, okay? We'd be setting ourselves for failure first with this step, and then we might say to our sponsor that look, I wrote it down in the risk register, right? So that's not leadership, okay? That's covering your backside without actually solving the problem. So option B is definitely an incorrect answer choice. Let's look at option D, which is also incorrect because it recommends escalating to the project management office for resource enforcement. Now, fair enough, the PMO might help with prioritization, but is that really addressing the core issue here? The fundamental problem isn't just resources, right? It's the triple constraint conflict, okay? The sponsor wants more scope, same timeline with no additional resources. Okay, so escalating this might get us some resources eventually, but it doesn't address the unrealistic expectations that has been set. Now think about it, resources doesn't come for free, okay? Even if you sort of take internal resources from your organization, they might cross-charge your project cost center with the fee for those resources. And of course, that cost is even evident if you are outsourcing stuff outside your team to a third party to get additional resources. So you are increasing cost anyways by sort of asking for additional stuff both internally or externally. So that is why option D is also incorrect. So the correct answer to this question is option C. So we need to present a data-driven schedule scenario and negotiate trade-offs with the sponsor. And you see that this is what actually professional project management looks like, okay? So we as project managers are not just order takers, right? We are trusted advisors. The sponsor wants three things that can't coexist together, okay? Plain and simple. The design change, the original deadline, and the current resources can't happen all together at the same point in time, okay? That is plain and simple truth. And we as the project manager should present the reality using data, okay, not opinions. And that is why the correct answer to this question is option C.
I hope you liked the session, guys. Please press the like button and subscribe to this channel if you really feel that this session has helped you in your PMP exam preparation journey. And I'll see you again in the next video.